So, the first season of MetaRunner has come to a close, and I'm sure many of you are wondering what my thoughts on it are. I could just answer with a simple tweet, but where's the fun in that? After all, I've talked about SMG4 plenty of times in the past, and this is the big project he's been hyping up for a long time, so I think it warrants a full review. Before we start, I want to comment on just how strange yet impressive it is that this thing even exists. This is a guy who's known for doing goofy Gmod meme videos, and now he's got a whole team making a fully voiced 3D anime. So, was it worth all the effort? Let's get into it. The main premise of MetaRunner is that the whole world revolves around video games. The better you are, the better your position in society. The best gamers are called MetaRunners, and they're willing to give up entire limbs just to improve their gaming skill. Is that last part mostly an excuse to design characters with cool robot arms? Probably, but it looks cool, so who cares? The main character, Tari, is a MetaRunner who has the ability to go inside video games, and as a result, she's being hunted by the major esports conglomerate, TazCorp. Also, she has amnesia. Now, I'm not gonna lie, the idea of a society run by video games sounds kinda goofy, and the show doesn't really do that much to make you take this idea seriously, nor do they play it as a joke and lean into how ridiculous it is. At first, I thought this was going to be a major problem, but the show does a good job of distracting you from that part of the premise. How so? Simply put, the suspense with this plotline really works, so you focus a lot more on what's going on with Tari and the others and what shady dealings TazCorp is up to, rather than thinking about how a society run on video games would work. The story's very well paced. Each episode has something substantial happen in it, and it never feels like things are moving too fast or too slow. The humor's also really good. It isn't the focus, as the show's more of a drama, but it shows up frequently enough and usually adds some much needed levity.
You're kidnapping me. That's just as bad. No, we're not. Think of it as temporarily borrowing your body for research. Oh, wait, hang on a second, that sounds worse.
I understand there would be some concerns in this department, as the humor in SMG4 is really off the wall and meme-based, so it might not fit with a more serious tone. Luckily, it's been toned down enough so it doesn't really feel out of place. Also, it's usually pretty funny. Now that I've got the general story stuff out of the way, how about the animation? As you can probably tell by looking at it, it's pretty low budget, but that's to be expected. After all, MetaRunner's a passion project funded through a mid-tier YouTuber selling merch. Of course it's not going to look like a professional animation studio. Expecting it to would be kinda ridiculous. The real question here is if the team was able to make the low budget work, or if it gets in the way of the storytelling. The answer is complicated. Let's start with the bad stuff. The character movements can feel pretty awkward at times, and sometimes the facial expressions don't really convey as much emotion as they should. However, the problems in both these areas are mostly in the first few episodes. Maybe I just got used to it, but I honestly think the animation got better as the series progressed. Now for the positives. While the character movements can be clunky at times, the designs themselves look pretty good. All the characters look cool, distinct, and just all around visually appealing. The environments look good too. The game worlds look nice, if a bit generic, and oddly enough, the real world looks even better. Silica City has this sci-fi, cyberpunk look to it that sounds like it would be cliche, but there was so much love and attention to detail put into it that it's hard not to love it. Whenever the characters are outside or in a tournament, you can expect to find some clever background references to SMG4, the show's sponsors, or parodies of various video games. Also, Tari is able to see ways to beat the games with her MetaRunner vision, and the interface for it looks really cool. And since there's nowhere else to say this, the theme song's great. I almost never skip it. The action's also great, which isn't surprising to me given the fact that this is SMG4. He's able to make engaging action sequences when he's using Gmod puppets. Imagine what he can do with an actual budget. It's pretty good for most of the show, but things really get good when the characters enter Tempest. It's basically a team-based Fortnite with magic spells, and the action is glorious. It's not on the same level as something like My Hero Academia or Kill la Kill, but the fact that I'm even bringing up those shows in a review of a YouTube series should tell you something. Now for the characters. Metarunner has a relatively small cast. There's only 7 characters who are really worth mentioning, which is convenient for me because that means I can run through each of them individually without making this video go on forever. First off is Tari. Like I said earlier, she has amnesia, so she's a bit of a blank slate. There's not a whole lot to her character, as she mostly just gets dragged around by the plot up until she decides to go save Theo and take down TazCorp. But you know what? That's fine. The events are so interesting that you don't really notice. Plus, she's likable enough to make it work. And while I'm talking about her, I think I should bring up the other Tari. You see, Tari's also a character in SMG4, and she was introduced long before Metarunner was even announced. And honestly, I think that's a brilliant idea. Get the fans invested in the character in one series so they'll be more interested in the other. It's not really relevant to anything in the show aside from a quick gag, but I had to mention it at some point. Next is Theo, a video game character who Tari accidentally brings into the real world. Theo is the exact kind of character you'd expect to find annoying as hell, but he isn't. He's actually pretty damn funny. He has this childlike innocence to him, but he can also get pretty sadistic at times, both of which can be pretty funny. Belle is probably the most complex character in the show. She's TazCorp's top Metarunner and takes advantage of that position. She trusts Lux for some reason, but is willing to argue with him or even straight up disobey him when it suits her needs. We get to see everything from her sense of superiority to her obsession with staying at the top to her anguish over losing her best friend. Also, she probably is the coolest design in the show. Lux is probably the weakest of the bunch. He's the head of TazCorp, and that's all you really need to know. There isn't much more to his character than being an evil businessman in charge of a shady company. He doesn't necessarily need to be that complex, as TazCorp does function well as an evil force, and it does need a face to it. Plus, Belle fulfills the role of a complex villain just fine, but I would have liked there to be at least a little more to this guy. Also, his voice is hilarious. It rivals Xemnas in just how much it screams obvious bad guy.
I no longer just want her abilities for TazCorp. I want her.
Still so blind. A nobody is what's left behind when one gives his heart to darkness.
While I'm talking about Lux, I should probably mention that most of the animation problems happen with him. Probably because he's not very expressive and his hair looks weird. Then there's the members of MD5. First off is Lamar, who was my favorite character on my first viewing of Metarunner. After rewatching it for this review, I'm leaning more towards Belle, but I still really like this guy. There's something about his friendly, easygoing attitude that's just appealing, and I think his voice actor did a really good job conveying it. His tendency towards caution serves as a nice contrast to Masa, and I'm just beating around the bush here. This dude's a total weeb, and it's hilarious. He's not quite as funny as Theo, but I still laughed at most of the anime jokes surrounding him, even if they did feel a bit out of place. In fact, I think that just made him funnier. Sophia's next, and I don't have a whole lot to say about her. She has a really hyperactive personality, which can be funny, but not as funny as some of the others. This is probably due to her having less screen time, but I don't feel like I got to know her as well as the other characters. She's not bad, she just failed to make an impression, although I'm sure they'll be able to do more with her in Season 2. Finally, there's Masa, the leader of the resistance against TazCorp. This guy's a typical tough mentor character who's reluctant to bring Tari on board, trains her for the big match, and sounds like the Halo narrator.
Don't let your emotions get the best of you, Lamar. We are MD5. There is no room for deadweight.
Yeah, this guy's a walking cliche, but it actually works. You really feel the connection he has with the other members of MD5 and with Tari. Plus, the backstory we get towards the end adds a whole new layer to his character. So, final thoughts. Overall, I'm quite impressed. This was clearly a big gamble for Glitch Productions. They put a lot of work into it, and I think it paid off. While the show certainly has its hiccups, it's a suspenseful and fun ride. It goes without saying that I'm excited for Season 2. I can't wait to see more of these characters, more games, more action, and where the story goes after this massive cliffhanger. There is one question I want answered above all else though. Why don't we see anyone with 2 Metarunner arms? I mean, they improve your gaming capabilities, and you need 2 hands to operate a controller, so why not have 2? You could say that people wouldn't be willing to replace both their their arms, but they'd be okay replacing one of them? Also, why do some go up to the shoulder while others stop at the elbow? You know what? This video is going to go on forever if I keep harping on this. I am Defoffilizer, and SMG4, enjoy all the praise Meta Runner's been getting. You've earned it.